They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought age dulled all senses, that I was too frail, too slow to catch on. But they were wrong. My name is George Whitaker. I'm 78, retired postal inspector, and I don't forget. Especially not betrayal. It started with a misplaced bottle of lisinopril. Harmless, right? People lose their meds all the time. But I've been taking that for 20 years. I don't just lose it. I organize my pills every Sunday morning like clockwork. Every bottle is labeled, every dosage memorized. And yet, last month, my blood pressure began spiking like I was eating bacon with every meal, which I wasn't, thank you very much. I first blamed myself. Old age. Stress. Maybe that second slice of rhubarb pie. But when I caught Melissa, my daughter-in-law, tossing something in the trash with that guilty snap of the wrist, I peeked. It was my pill bottle. Half full. She smiled when I looked up. "Oh, Dad," she said sweetly. "You probably dropped it again." Again. No. Something was off. Something was deliberate. And that's when the little voice in my head, the one trained to spot patterns, lies, and false addresses, whispered, "They're trying to control you." So I smiled back. The same way I did when I was investigating mail fraud rings in Detroit. Calm. Cool. Silent. If they wanted a weak-old man, they should have picked someone else. Melissa always brought me sweet tea at 4 p.m. She claimed it was her little way of showing care. "Your sugar's low, Dad," she'd say. "Doctor's orders." Funny. My doctor never said anything about sugar levels. But I drank it anyway. Until I didn't. Instead, I dumped it into the snake plant by the window and kept the cup on the table like I always did. Just to see. 2 days later, she came in with the same smile. "You seem so tired lately. Forgetting things. Maybe it's time we think about a facility." There it was. The slip. Melissa had always been ambitious. Too ambitious for my son, to be honest. David inherited my naive streak, but not my instincts. Melissa married him when he landed that job with a tech firm in Atlanta. Her eyes glowed brighter than the diamond she picked out for herself. Now she ran the house like she ran her Instagram, perfectly curated, no wrinkles, no mess, no old man slowing things down. But now, I had a wrinkle to iron out. I began to test her. I pretended to forget conversations. I shuffled a little more. I asked silly questions like, "What's the Wi-Fi password again?" Even though it's still the same as it was when I paid for the router 2 years ago. Melissa seemed pleased. Too pleased. Then came the spoon. I keep a silver spoon from my Navy days in my sock drawer. It's silly, I know, but it's mine. Engraved. Polished. I've carried it through deployments, storms, and hospital visits. I polish it every Friday. Until one day, it was gone. "Melissa," I asked calmly, "did you move my spoon?" Her eyes blinked too fast. "Spoon?" she repeated, too casually. "No, I haven't been in your room." Liar. I checked the kitchen drawer later that night. There it was, tucked behind the mismatched ladles. That's when I knew this wasn't just passive neglect. This was calculated. A campaign. They weren't just trying to gaslight me. They were building a case. A case that I was losing my mind. And I needed to beat them to the punch. I ordered it off Amazon. A simple clock with a tiny lens built in. Voice activated. Records in 4K. Who says old men can't learn new tricks? I installed it above the mantel facing the hallway. Another in the kitchen. I made sure it caught her every move when she brought me that sweet tea or crept around my room with her phone out like she was photographing my mess. Within a week, I had footage. Clear as daylight. Melissa opening my pillbox. Melissa pouring out half the contents. Melissa tossing them into the trash. Melissa taking pictures of my unmade bed and muttering, "Perfect, just perfect." I watched those recordings with the patience of a man who once waited 6 months to catch a postal embezzler. And then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in decades, Elena Morales. Elena was sharp as ever. We'd crossed paths when I was in federal investigations. She was a bulldog in heels back then. Now she ran her own elder law practice, specializing in guardianship abuse. When she heard my voice, she laughed. "George Whitaker, I thought you died in Arizona." "Not yet," I replied. "But someone's trying to hurry me along." I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Do you have proof?" "I have video. Time-stamped. Multiple angles." Her voice shifted into fifth gear. "Then we don't go to the police." "Not yet. We go legal. Quietly. I'll draft the papers." "What papers?" "The ones that make you their legal guardian." That night, I hid the file she sent in my locked drawer and slept like a man half my age. It wasn't just about the pills anymore. Elena told me what to look for: documents, financial statements, property deeds, insurance. I accidentally asked David to help me sort through the mail one evening. Melissa was out at her yoga class. I saw it then. A letter addressed to Melissa from a private care facility with my name on it. Estimated cost, $6,000 per month. "Planning something?" I asked casually. David looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You tell me," I said, handing him the letter. His face fell. "She told me this was just for research, in case things get worse. She's planning to move me into a care home," I said bluntly. "One she picked. One she controls." David opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker across his eyes. Good. I needed him shaken, because the next phase of my plan would break everything apart. Sunday dinners used to be my favorite. Roast beef, creamy potatoes, corn on the cob. The smells, the laughter, the tradition. But this Sunday, it was going to be a battlefield with biscuits. I shaved, dressed sharp, and even wore that ridiculous maroon sweater Beth got me last Christmas. The one that made me look like an off-brand college professor. Let them underestimate me. That was the plan. Melissa had outdone herself, plating everything like she was auditioning for a cooking show. But her eyes darted around, scanning me, testing for weakness, or perhaps for missing doses. I greeted her with a smile so warm it probably confused her. "Melissa, this roast looks incredible." She blinked. "Thanks, Dad. You're in a good mood." "Just grateful," I said, cutting into my beef, letting the silence simmer. My eyes locked on Jason, who was already on his third glass of wine, oblivious as always. Mid-meal, I pulled out a small velvet pouch and placed it next to my plate. Melissa's gaze froze. "What's that?" she asked, a forkful of green beans hovering mid-air. "Oh, just something I've been meaning to show you too." I opened the pouch and slowly spilled out a tiny object. A nanny cam. Melissa's face drained. Jason looked confused. "What is that, Dad?" "Something that recorded every special tea and missing pill for the last 3 weeks. Right from the clock in the living room." Silence. Then, Melissa's voice went sharp. "That's illegal. You can't just." "Actually, it's legal in this state to record in your own home if you're a resident," I replied, coolly sipping my water. "And guess what? I'm still the homeowner, despite someone trying to forge a few signatures." Jason slammed his glass down. "Are you accusing us of something?" "Oh, I'm not accusing. I'm stating. And I've got a date with my lawyer tomorrow. Elena Morales." Sharp as a tack. Melissa's hands trembled. "Dad, we were just trying to help. You've been so forgetful. We were worried. You hid my medication. You fed me fake pills. You tried to paint me as incompetent so you could take control of my assets. That's not help. That's sabotage." Jason muttered. "You're paranoid." I stood up. Maybe. But paranoia with proof is called preparation. Now, finish your dinner. You'll need your strength for the legal storm coming your way. I walked out of that room with the nanny cam still ticking in my palm. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Later that evening, I sat in my room with a crossword puzzle I had no intention of solving. I just needed something to hold while I processed what had happened at dinner. The silence in the house was thick. Not awkward, electric. A knock at my door broke the tension. "Come in," I said, already knowing who it would be. Melissa stepped inside, clutching a mug like it was a peace offering. "Chamomile. Helps you sleep." I stared at the mug, then looked up at her. "Is this the same brand you've been giving me for weeks?" Her jaw tensed. "That's not fair. I didn't take the mug. Fairness wasn't your concern when you were emptying my pill bottles." She sat on the edge of the bed, her voice low. "You don't understand how hard it's been. You've changed, Dad. You were forgetting things. You left the stove on, twice. I was scared. Scared enough to fake incompetency documents. Scared enough to lie to my doctor." She didn't respond. I leaned forward. "You could have helped me the right way, Melissa. But you chose control." She whispered, almost pleading, "We're your family. You don't want to do this. Lawyers, court battles, it'll tear us apart." "You already tore us apart when you stopped trusting me." Her eyes glistened. "If you go through with this, you'll ruin us. Jason's job, our reputation. We could lose everything. You should have thought of that before you started acting like vultures." She stood abruptly, all gentleness gone. "You really want to fight us? Fine. But remember, Dad, courts aren't kind to people your age. All I need is a few medical reports and—" I cut her off. "Already sent them to a geriatric specialist for an independent review. Oh, and I've got witnesses now. That new home nurse? She saw everything. And she's ready to testify." Her face twisted. That was the real moment. Not dinner. Not the nanny cam. This was when she knew she'd lost control. "Good night, Melissa," I said calmly. "And don't forget to lock the front door. I'm not the one you should be worried about sneaking around anymore." She left without another word. I didn't touch the tea. The next morning, I dressed sharp. Not out of vanity but strategy. People underestimate you less when your tie is straight and your shoes are polished. I rode down to the law office of Emily Green, a bulldog in heels, as they say. She was half my age but 10 times as fierce as any attorney I'd ever met. I found her through a friend at the community center who whispered, "If your kids are screwing you over, she's the one you call." "Mr. Whitmore," she said, standing as I entered. "Come in. I've reviewed the documents you emailed. We've got work to do." She gestured to a leather chair. I sat. "I'll cut to the chase," she said, flipping through a folder. "They filed for a conservatorship behind your back, using manipulated medical documents. That's elder abuse and fraud. You've already built a strong case with the recordings, witnesses, and your cognitive assessments." I nodded. "I don't just want to block their conservatorship. I want to make sure they can never do this to me, or anyone else, again." Emily smiled. "Then we start with a revocable living trust. You'll name yourself as trustee and assign successor trustees of your choosing. Not Melissa. Not Jason. Someone neutral. We'll also draft a power of attorney that invalidates the one they forged. And a will, airtight and ironclad. I also want a restraining order if they try to mess with my medication again." She jotted that down. "We'll request that during the conservatorship dismissal hearing. The court will take that very seriously." She pushed a form toward me. "Sign here to get started. I'll file the revocation of their power today." As I signed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safety. Emily leaned back. "Anything else you want to do?" I thought about it, then smiled. "Yes, I want to set up a charitable foundation in my late wife's name and make sure every dollar they tried to steal ends up helping people who really need it. Now that made her grin. Revenge with a legacy. I like it. I stood and shook her hand. Let's make them powerless. Legally. The courthouse smelled like stale paper and nerves. I hadn't been in one since my property tax dispute in '94. But this time, it was personal. Emily met me at the entrance, sharp in her gray blazer, holding a thick binder. "You ready?" she asked. "Ready to reclaim my life," I said. Inside, Melissa and Jason sat with their attorney, a smug guy in an overpriced suit who looked like he was billing them by the second. Melissa avoided my gaze, but Jason smirked, until the judge walked in. All rise. Judge Pennington was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s. Sharp eyes. Probably saw right through their game before we even said a word. Emily started. "Your Honor, this is not just a case of conservatorship. This is a case of coercion, manipulation, and elder abuse. Mr. Whitmore is of sound mind and has been targeted by his own children for financial gain." The opposing lawyer objected immediately. "Unsubstantiated. We have medical documents." Emily cut in. "Forged, Your Honor. And we have the real ones. Signed and dated by 3 independent specialists." She handed over the stack. The judge flipped through them. "And this," Emily added, pulling out a flash drive. Audio recordings of Melissa discussing how they hid medication to make Mr. Whitmore appear cognitively unfit. The courtroom went silent. The judge listened for a minute. Melissa's voice filled the room. "He needs to forget stuff for a while, just until the paperwork's done. If he doesn't take those pills, he gets sharp again." Jason's voice replied, "Just mix 'em with juice. He won't know." Melissa stood up. "This is taken out of context." The judge raised a hand. "Sit down, Ms. Whitmore. You'll get your turn." Emily continued. "Mr. Whitmore has since established a new trust, revoked their power of attorney, and filed to remove all legal authority from his children. He's fully competent, and we're requesting dismissal of the conservatorship with prejudice." Jason leaned over and whispered something to their lawyer. He looked visibly paler now. When it was my turn, I stood. "I may be old, Your Honor. I may move slower, and sometimes my knees make a sound like popcorn. But I'm not incompetent. I'm a veteran, a retired engineer, a husband who buried his wife with dignity, and a father who deserved better." I looked straight at Melissa. "You took my medicine to take my freedom. But I got both back." Judge Pennington nodded slowly. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you. Based on the evidence, I'm dismissing the petition. And I'm ordering a separate hearing to investigate elder abuse and fraud." Court adjourned. Bang of the gavel. Jason slumped. Melissa burst into tears. And I felt free. Emily grinned as we walked out. "That went better than expected." "Now," I said, "let's talk about that foundation." The courtroom was behind me, but my mission had just begun. Winning the case was never just about me. It was about reclaiming my dignity and protecting others like me. Back at home, Emily Green joined me for coffee. We sat on the porch overlooking the street I'd walked for 40 years. "It's time to talk about that foundation," I said. She opened her notebook. I took the liberty of drafting the bylaws. The Margaret Whitmore Foundation for Elder Rights. Just hearing her name spoken with purpose gave me goosebumps. "We'll offer legal aid, helplines, and crisis housing for seniors at risk of manipulation or abandonment," I said. "And we'll make damn sure what happened to me isn't happening in silence to someone else." Emily nodded. "You'll be the founder and board chair. I already have 3 lawyers and 2 social workers interested in helping." Within weeks, we had a launch event. Local news picked it up. Interviews followed. I sat in front of a camera, 78 years old, speaking with a voice that was no longer hoarse with defeat. My children tried to control me by hiding my medicine, I said during the interview. But the law gave me my power back. And now, I'm passing that power forward. The donations poured in. One woman wrote, "Your story saved my mother." Another said, "I thought I was crazy. You proved I wasn't." I visited senior homes, community centers, hospitals, anywhere older folks gathered. I told them their rights. I told them how to document, speak up, and fight back. And one night, as I sat alone with Margaret's photo beside the fireplace, I whispered, "I'm not done yet, love. You always believed in justice. Now your name lives in it." It was a quiet Sunday morning when I heard a knock on the door. Not the mailman, not Emily. Something in the rhythm felt uncertain. I opened the door, and there stood Melissa, hair tied back, a file in her hand, and, most jarring, a look of humility I never thought I'd see. "Dad," she said, "I know I'm the last person you want to see. But I need to talk." I didn't move. She continued, "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here for money. I want to explain." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat at the same kitchen table where she'd once screamed that I was losing my mind. Now, she was quiet, measured. "I did everything wrong," she admitted. "I panicked. After Mom passed, I thought I had to take control. But I took your life from you instead." I stared at her. "And hiding my medicine?" She looked ashamed. "I thought if I made you dependent, you'd stay in the house. Safe. Contained." I know now it was control, not love. A long silence stretched. Finally, I said, "People make mistakes. But you didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice, every day. Over and over." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can't undo it. But maybe I can help now, with the foundation. Or anything you need." I looked at her hard. "You want forgiveness?" "No," she said quietly. "Just a chance to earn it." Melissa began volunteering with the foundation. Skeptical as I was, she showed up. Daily. She organized files, answered phones, sat with elderly visitors who looked haunted by stories that mirrored mine. She didn't ask for praise. She didn't demand recognition. Emily watched her closely, too. "I think she's sincere," she told me over lunch. "I think she's scared," I replied. Scared of the woman she became. One afternoon, a man named Henry, 82, recently kicked out of his own home by his son, arrived at our door. Melissa helped him find legal aid and transitional housing. She even drove him to his hearing. Later, Henry told me, "That woman, she gets it. She helped me feel seen." It didn't erase the past, but it planted something new. Trust, like an old oak, doesn't regrow overnight. But roots were stirring. 2 years passed. The Margaret Whitmore Foundation became a statewide name. We had 8 employees, a crisis line, a mobile legal van, and our first grant from the Department of Aging. I gave speeches at conferences. I mentored young lawyers passionate about elder justice. I even visited D.C. to testify before a Senate subcommittee on elder exploitation. One senator asked, "Mr. Whitmore, do you believe elder abuse is invisible?" I leaned into the mic. "It's not invisible. We've just trained ourselves not to look." Applause filled the chamber. Back home, I looked at the plaque on my wall. The man who wouldn't be silenced. Melissa had come a long way. She still bore the scars of her mistakes, but she bore them openly. And through service, she stitched some healing. At our annual gala, she took the stage. "I was part of the problem once," she said, voice shaking. "But this foundation, my father, taught me how to be part of the solution." It was my 80th birthday. Emily, Melissa, and a crowd of supporters surprised me with a party at the community center named after me, George Whitmore Hall. Cake, speeches, laughter. And at the end of the night, Emily pulled me aside. "There's one more surprise," she said. She handed me a letter. From Margaret. Written years ago. She'd left it with Emily before her surgery. I opened it with shaking hands. George, if you're reading this, you survived, and I knew you would. I always believed in your fight, in your stubborn justice. Keep going. Even without me, you are the strongest man I know. I sat in stunned silence. Tears flowed freely. I looked around the room, at faces I'd helped, and those who'd helped me. I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. This was resurrection. They hid my medicine to control me. But I made them powerless with one legal move. And I used that power to help hundreds more find their voice.